I don't know if any of you read the New York Times, but this past Wednesday morning, there was a fascinating article by Jennifer Gross called "Christianity Has a Branding Problem." I think I know what she means. So when you hear Christian in the news, I'm guessing it probably is not in a positive context. So try to think of a positive story you've read or seen in the news in the past month about Christianity. Maybe anyone come up with anything? Not seeing any hands. Yeah, we have a really large part of 3 generations who don't affiliate at all with any religious tradition, even though many of them claim to believe in God. In fact, this morning I read that in the past decade, religious affiliation in this country has dropped 11%. That's a precipitous drop in 10 years. So we'll come back to 21st century America in a few moments, but I'm going to ask you to transport yourselves back into the first century and the Apostle Paul, who is a Greek-speaking Jew who was born in Tarsus, which is in modern-day Turkey. And he has experienced a radical conversion from somebody who was persecuting proto-Christians to become the nascent movement's most effective spokesperson. That's a lot of what the book of the Acts of the Apostles is about. Paul, as the apostle, the teacher, convincing Gentiles that this new sort of brand of Judaism is fundamentally true and that they are welcome to join, whether they're Jew or Greek, slave or free, male or female. Paul has found something amazing, so delightful, so deep, that he changes everything about his life and his work in response. And ultimately, it costs him his life at the hands of empire. So he finds himself speaking with the poets and the philosophers in Athens. And just before today's text opens, they are scoffing at Paul, calling him literally a seed picker. I think I might have translated that as a hayseed, but the New Revised Standard Version translates it as an amateur. So here you are, Paul, you're an amateur. Yet, some of them become curious about these new twists on Judaism, which they regard highly as an ancient religion. And so they bring him up to the hill of Mars, the Areopagus, so that he can explain further. And he begins by saying, "Athenians, I see how extremely religious you are in every way. For as I went through the city and looked carefully at the objects of your worship, I found among them an altar with an inscription, 'To an unknown God.'" Now, an altar in this context, and in many religions around the world, it's a place where sacrifice is made. Sometimes it's an animal sacrifice. Sometimes it's a sacrifice of grain. Sometimes people. That's why we call this object in our tradition a communion table, not an altar. In the Catholic Mass, a priest reenacts Jesus' death as the once and forever sacrifice. And that isn't our theology in most of the UCC. That's a story for another day. But even when we worship, we bring our offerings, we bring our financial sacrifices forward, and we leave them on something that sort of resembles an altar. At every service, we offer a prayer of dedication to these offerings. We dedicate them to the use of God. And sometimes, as at the 9 o'clock service, when we combine it with communion, we also say a prayer of thanksgiving for the sacrament of communion. It's a 2-for-1 prayer that we have at 9 o'clock. But at our 11 o'clock service, when we sing the doxology, we are singing the offerings forward. And from a religious studies point of view, it's a central function in our worship, even though we may not think of it quite that way. So back to Paul. and the altar to an unknown God. Paul infers that he knows the identity of this unnamed God, and it is the one true deity in whom we live and move and have our being. He has presented a case to the Greeks using philosophical terms that might have seemed a bit abstract to Jews in the homeland. Think of the contrast between the Yahweh of the patriarchs, the God who speaks to Moses from a burning bush, who shows the people a new land that they will inherit, who is later thought to reside in the temple in Jerusalem. That is a visceral, active, sometimes vindictive, anthropomorphic tribal God. True, no one has ever seen God except when Moses catches a glimpse, but in other ways, he's not entirely dissimilar to Zeus. In fact, in a lot of European Renaissance paintings, the image of Yahweh, which of course Jews would never reproduce, that's a graven image, that image bears a startling resemblance to Zeus, an old man with a long white beard. That may be the childhood image you grew up with of God. So let me ask you a question. Is that a God you believe in? One of the issues for some people today who claim not to believe in God is that they have a really outdated or a stereotypical image of God, the God that we worship. So do you see the parallel between Paul explaining God as the ground of all being, like we just sang, to the Athenians and the branding problems we have with Christianity today? We need to explain what being a Christian can mean in our lives and in the context of our society. You may have been wondering what the blackboards are for, and soon you will find out. You know, one of the best questions to ask folks who claim that they don't believe in God is, tell me about the God you don't believe in. Chances are good that you don't believe in that God either. So I'm going to turn the tables and ask you to help me finish the sermon. Think for a moment about the aspects or the attributes of God that some people may assume. And let's write down some of those things about the God they don't believe in. So the negative side. And Marta is going to be helping this morning as our amanuensis. How's that for us?
So it's the God you don't.
This is the God you don't believe in.
Okay, what is the God you don't believe in?
Yeah. Raise your hand and tell me. Angry. Yes. Please, Diane. Sorry? Punishing. Wow. Anne. Fear-driven. Ovella. Unconditional love. Oh, conditional love. Excellent. Thank you.
Hold on. Fear. What is fear what?
Fear-driven. And then conditional love. Sorry? Judgmental.
Yeah, no one wants a judgy
Sybil.
God.
Jealous. It's right there. It's right there in Scripture, isn't it? Yeah. Wrathful. He has trampled out the vineyards where the grapes of wrath are stored. We even sing about it, don't we? What else? Paula. Controlling. Great. Please. Always male. Right? How about homophobic? God doesn't like gay people. How about unjust? Cheryl. Shows favoritism. Yeah, it's like, sorry, Canaanites. That land that you thought was yours, not anymore. Okay, I've got another question. Oh, Dan, way in the back.
Separate from us.
Separate from us. Yeah, so God is way out there, not around here, and certainly not in here. Yeah, Ken. Vindictive. That's a good one, isn't it? Non-evolving. There's a whole branch of theology called process theology that is all about how God changes. So this is a tougher question now. Tell me some of the characteristics, the qualities of the God that you do believe in. Love.
That's
Love is always.
right.
You know, years ago we had a lovely member of the congregation named Bob Calkins. Bob was a psychiatrist, and he would, whenever I made things more complicated than they have to be, he'd always say, Hal, it's all about love. That was my best Bob Calkins impersonation. He was just an amazing human. Please, John. Inclusive. Not just for us, not just for the chosen people. Sybil. Compassionate. Be compassionate as your Father in heaven is compassionate. Forgiving. Yeah. Can I get an amen for forgiving? Amen. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. What else? Sorry? Accepting. Accepting. Yeah, please.
Everywhere within us instead of everywhere and within us.
Everywhere and within us instead of just somewhere way out there. Yeah. 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 Patient? Patient, unlike me. Patient. Thank you, Diane. Tom? Colorblind. Yeah. You know, it's like we think of God as being, well, we don't. Some people used to think of God as being, you know, white, frankly. And you know better than anyone, having grown up in Africa, God is not white. Yeah. Thank you, Tom. So, those are interesting lists. Do you think God accepts Republicans and Democrats and independents and socialists? Even if you don't? Do you think God invites us into deeper knowing in our spiritual lives? That God desires justice? Encourages us to be part of this struggle for peace and justice? There's a lot there. I wonder if everyone had an image of God that looks more at the lower end that Marty just wrote out.
I was supposed to do it side by side.
It's okay. It's totally okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's assume that some of these folks who have no religious affiliation might believe in the same kind of God that we do, the God on the lower half. God who is a positive force in the universe that undergirds everything. In other words, is the power in whom we live and move and have our being. Well, we still run up against the problem of the church's branding, don't we? You know, I understand this personally. As a teenager, when I saw the rise of the televangelists on TV, I found it utterly repugnant. The prosperity gospel being preached by some people today, and even Joel Osteen's hair, I find that, you know, if that's, I'm sorry, I should not take cheap shots at people's hair, because any hair day is a good hair day.
Oh my God.
So I thought as a teenager, well, deal me out of this hand. Christianity is not for me, regardless of the fact that I grew up in a nice UCC church. So we're going to do something else. So tell me about the church that you don't want to belong to because it is blank. This is like the old TV game show, The Match Game. Blank, please tell me. Dogmatic. Wow. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Great. Please. Exclusive. Yeah. If you're not like us, you don't belong, no matter what us means. Please. Judgmental. Boy, isn't that the truth? It's very interesting. I think a lot of us are really afraid of being judged, and sometimes, as some of you know, I have a salty vocabulary at times, and when somebody who doesn't know I'm a minister says a salty word in front of me, and then they find out I'm a minister, what's the first thing they do? They apologize. I'm so sorry, Hal. And it's like, don't worry. One of the members of our congregation actually gave me a paperweight that's on my desk, and it's a little iron bomb with an F on the front. So anyway, Kevin. Tells you how to vote. Yeah. Thank you. Jackie? Male dominant in leadership. Yeah. Hypocritical. I think that's one of the $64,000 question answers right there. It's like, how can you claim to be loving when you're not? Well, none of us hits a homer every time we come to bat, do we? Tibble. Homophobic. How often have we seen that? Those of us who have been around for a few years where there was no such thing as open and affirming. Even in the UCC.
Unwilling to change.
Unwilling to change. Thank you. How about filled with child molesting clergy?
Oh my gosh.
I kid you not. It's really interesting. When I was serving in the Connecticut conference of the UCC, it's when the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston kind of blew up. And we all get tarred by the same brush. But the other thing that happened is a lot of the Me Too clergy folks in the UCC also, that started coming to light at the same time. How about anti-science? One of the things that I love about Plymouth is that there are scientists among us. In fact, we have a Nobel Prize winning scientist in our congregation. How about oppressive to women? And anybody who's not straight and cisgender? Yeah. Hateful. Yeah, we see that, don't we? Yeah, Jack. I'm sorry? What was it? Oh, so denomination. Excluding to other denominations. Yeah. So there are certain churches that if you went into, you wouldn't be welcome to receive communion. That happens.
Wait, what was that?
Denominationally exclusive. Bless you. How about pro-gun? I literally at Costco saw a guy with a t-shirt that said, family, guns, and Jesus. In that order. Cheryl. If you don't believe their form of Christianity, you aren't a Christian. Yeah, Ken. Racist. And that's fair. How about a tool of imperialism? Our folks were the first missionaries in Hawaii, although there's some twists to that story. But think about, the Church of England and the span of the British Empire. Think about Roman Catholicism in this hemisphere. It's shocking.
How?
Oh, please. Financially selfish. There we go. Okay, so the easy part for a lot of us is pulling down the negatives. We're better at shooting down what other people do than we are at looking at our own stuff. There's some of this in us, too. But what are some of the things that make you want to belong to a church that you think the God you believe in would like to have us create? What are some of the characteristics of a church? And it could be stuff that's already happening, and it could be stuff that we aspire to. It's something that you, maybe we haven't thought about before. Aaron.
Loving and giving community.
Loving and giving community. Thank you. Meg.
A God who is still speaking.
Yes, we believe in a God who is still speaking. Yeah. Ashley. Authentic and vulnerable. Wow. Sharon. Sorry? Tolerant. Tolerant. Mike. Accepting. Accepting. Yeah, no, you can hear her rattling away up there, can't you? She's good. Gary.
Open to all.
Open to all. Open to all. Yeah. Have you ever noticed how many churches have on their sign, everyone welcome? You know, I always feel like ... unless you are blank. Thanks, Gary. Ken.
Broad and far-reaching ministry.
Broad and far-reaching ministry. Yeah. Yeah. Mike. Always there. Always there. Judy. Active in the community through social justice. Thank you. Please. Did you say adaptive?
Yes.
Adaptive and in harmony with the natural world. Yeah, so I mean, some of us really do care about creation and creation justice. And yeah, Meg.
Recognizes our own power
Recognizes our own power and
and how to use it for good.
how to use it for good. Yeah, I mean, one of the dangerous things about power is that if you don't recognize you have it, you're more apt to abuse it. At least that's my opinion. Ashley.
On behalf of Charlotte, fun.
Charlotte says fun. Right on, Charlotte. Charlotte's sort of down
Most
between her parents and knees
importantly,
there.
it needs to be fun.
Right? It's okay.
What's the point if it's
okay.
not fun?
Yeah. Yeah. Please, Vella. Sorry?
Loving.
Loving. Isn't that what it's about?
Willing to have hard conversations.
Yes.
Humble.
Humble.
On Charlotte, we search for people like Martha.
Okay. On behalf of Charlotte, we search for people.
Like our kids, we search for people that can make us better rather than believing we are good enough.
Okay. So I'm trying to think of, yeah, humble enough to know that we don't know it all. Does that capture it? Yeah. Anti-gun. Yeah. You may not know it, but we have an anti-gun violence ministry team here at Plymouth. And at the end of the summer, beginning of fall, we're going to have a gun buyback here at Plymouth that ministry team is sponsoring. How about, Jack? Teaching. Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully we're educable too, right?
Do what?
How about intellectually valid? How about a church that builds bridges instead of building walls? Yeah. Music. You know, thank you for saying that. Where else in our society do we have participative music anymore? I mean, music where you're encouraged to sing or play double bass or live music doesn't happen as often, even if we all have Spotify. So, wow.
We have one more.
Oh. Available clergy. We try. I wonder if we, in this country, have a lot of younger folks who have a yearning to find a place to explore their spiritual journeys. And perhaps they've come across an experience that tells them that there is more to life than learning, earning, and dying. Perhaps when they look at church in this country, all they see is televangelists and white evangelicals and prosperity gospelers and shut down church buildings. Maybe some of them don't like the God that others believe in. And maybe some of them have no idea that a church like this one exists. Because we have a branding problem. I wonder if some of them have come across the 21st century version of an altar to an unknown God in their search for meaning. And if there isn't someone like Paul to help them understand, they're likely to walk right on by. There are plenty of folks out there that you know at work, at your exercise class, in your hiking group, in your book group, at school, in your senior residence, who have given up on the God that we don't believe in. And they've given up on the church that you and I would avoid like the plague. They don't know we're here. They really don't. And they're waiting for you to invite them into a community that has gifts to offer. A sense of belonging, meaning-making, intergenerational community. I mean, where else do you see people who are everywhere from single digits into their 90s in one place anymore? A community that has unity in the struggle for justice, a radical welcome for all, grounded in God's grace. Who do you know that might be searching? Who do you know that needs the gifts that Plymouth has to offer? And they are profound gifts. So when you see them at the altar to an unknown God, may you have the love and the courage to invite them to share in the treasure that you have found here. May it be so. Amen. And thank you for helping me write the sermon.